The Sun does not function as Earth science tells you it does. It is not a thermonuclear ball. It is something more complicated. From the strictly 3D point of view, it is seen and understood as a hydrogen ball in a constant thermonuclear fusion. But if you add up the other planes, you will find that the suns, are portals, white holes. This sun is not yellow, it is white, and its flares do not cause any problem for the biology, only for the telecommunications. Solar flare? There are flares all the time and nothing happens. Besides, the sun is not as they say. Nothing is happening to the sun. When they tell you that, it's just so that people do not see the real problems, to saturate you with things, so you do not see what the cabal does.
Once again, nothing is happening to the sun. It seems as if it comes from the sun because the waves come from that direction. They say it has no spots, and human science falls very short in understanding. This is natural. It has nothing to do with the waves. The sun gives off solar wind. That is something else. The solar wind changes with the activity of the spots. They do not understand that it is a living being with consciousness, connected to others. It has temperament. This soul 13, sun 13, is very temperamental and very strong, compared with Taygeta, for example. When it has no spots, then the transit of the ships there becomes difficult or even stops, since the spots are portals through which they pass. Although they open cyclically, and you can predict when they will open, because as everything with consciousness, the sun observes its own routines.
Asks Robert. Okay, it is a living being. Does it have intelligence as we know it? And does the Earth, too, have the intelligence as we know it?
Not as we know it. It is of a different nature because it is a sun. Its consciousness is much more expanded, of very high densities, and it includes the sum of multiple consciousnesses as it happens with everything. Once again, human science misses this point. A human being is the sum of the collective consciousnesses of the cells that compose it, and the associated microorganisms in symbiosis, and all the human beings compose as cells, together with the consciousnesses of other organisms, the animals and the plants, the cells that compose the planetary consciousness of the Earth. And the Earth and the other planets compose, in part, that of the Sun, as a sum. Thus, the consciousnesses get added up until they become a single unified, collective universal consciousness, or the Source.
The sun is a portal. Therefore, what looks bright is the exit. The entrance, or negative sun, is in another part, central part, constellation of Andromeda, and in a black hole. They create an energetic toroid, plus minus, like everything else that works with the toroid as a geometric form of manifestation of consciousness, potential energy, matter. The entrance is a black hole. The exit is a sun. It is the very energy of an energetic entity, that is the suns or stars. Not all of its being is on this one plane, so only a part is perceived. A whole in 3 dimensions is a sphere. Therefore, the entrance and the exit are spherical. They always wrongly portray the black holes as a funnel. It is correct, but partially. They are spherical holes that can be accessed from any direction. Black hole above, under it a white hole or star. All of the universe, that is the initial 5D matrix and also the 3D matrix, which is a caricature or simulation of a simulation, works with the toroid as the base geometric form for manifestation of consciousness with regards to potential energy and then in matter. The consciousness, in holding an idea, let's say a sphere, accumulates the potential energy little by little. If the energy of the consciousness is sufficiently strong, a potential energy point of major concentration will be created, which then will form what is perceived as hard matter. What receives attention creates or manifests itself. What is ignored is destroyed. Therefore, the socially accepted theory that the first molecules of life and the first proto-organisms were formed by chance in a chemical soup on primitive Earth makes no sense. Without attention, the attention of a consciousness, matter tends to dissipate back into potential energy. It cannot accumulate or grow in complexity. This is because if you neglect something, it tends to disappear, to deteriorate. Be it a car, a house, a chair made of wood abandoned outside. It does not receive attention, love creating intention, maintenance. Hence, it begins to degrade into simpler things, into raw material. A DNA molecule is then created with the intention of it existing. It does not happen by chance. For a whole DNA molecule to be created out of nothing is several thousand times less likely than if a tornado passed through a junkyard and left a perfect replica of a Ferrari in its way. The matrix, be it the copy or the initial one, reads and copies the intention of the consciousness and forms it into something tangible. But again, it is just perception. In itself, matter does not exist. Going back to the toroids, it is the geometric creative form of all matter, in basic or primordial form. From an atom, a molecule, a living cell, to an apple, a planet, a sun, and even the galaxy, they are all toroids. This also checks with mathematics and geometry applied to the mechanics of the manifestation, that the Earth cannot be flat, because again, it is a toroid. This is why there are openings at the poles. Everything is a toroid or part of a toroid, so the Sun is not a thermonuclear ball, as they say, but a localized energetic point of attention, which is why it shines. but logically, it has other parts, parts from where its energy originates, that gets recycled constantly with the dynamics of the flow of its toroid, although you cannot perceive it all from the limited to certain frequencies point of view, as is the 3D perception. There are other parts of the sun there that we cannot see. And in itself, the sun is only one more piece in the fabric of the universe, a component, as a cell is to an organic body. So it is a toroid that is part of something larger, that in turn is part of something else even larger. This is not only Taygetan science. Humans are already picking up on it with experiments such as the double slit, where a photon is a wave of potential energy when it does not receive attention, or is a particle when someone is looking at it. This is the principle, or the most basic example, by which all matter exists. Simply, what has more attention is more attention. It grows and accumulates complexity. This too explains the very real phenomenon of the tulpas egregores. The consciousness too, because in itself there is only one consciousness, the supreme I of the source, and every person, every consciousness, not only is a part of said consciousness, by right it is the very same consciousness. Therefore, what a person sees and perceives is by right the reality. Asks Robert, does the sun cause cancer? Cancer is a complicated thing. It does not owe its existence to isolated causes. More than anything, it is mental, although there are artificial ones. As for the sun, it can only encourage or potentiate an already existing problem. In itself, there is nothing wrong with the sun, and the ultraviolet rays that are portrayed as dangerous not only do not harm, but raise the frequency of the person. X-rays, among others, are harmful. Asks Robert. And the X-rays come from the sun or the universe? Both, but mostly from the sun for someone of Earth. The sun only promotes a cancer or skin problem when combined with the excretion of toxins through the skin, and sunscreens produce these substances that, combined with the sun, get activated, producing skin cancer. Never use sunscreen. It is part of Agenda 21. It is on our blacklist. Creams and oils used or put on the skin during exposure to the sun can cause burns, because a magnifying glass effect occurs when the skin is left under a transparent layer of oil or cream. That is when a greenhouse effect occurs. This also applies to car care products, such as vinyl or plastic protectors that are sold to make the car shine. It also ends up destroying the piece of plastic it was meant to protect. Asks Robert, can there be a collision between black holes? They happen at internal level, because they are connected inside. But this is more etheric. Yes, a collision is possible, nothing usual. Black hole photography. In the most extreme case, you can only photograph what is going on there as long as it emits light. And that is another problem, because the hole itself would absorb the light emitted by the entering object, even from a distance. This is the excuse for the color red in the photograph. With red light, the visible light spectrum would be towards the reds, because it has the longest wavelength. There is an intrinsic problem in that image. The hole is shown in 2D. It is flat, like a disk. The other components are human classifications that by themselves do not have to be invalid. I'm going to show you something that looks more like a real black hole. The hole is a sphere that absorbs everything equally from any direction. Asks Robert. But would it be a sphere in 3D, X, Y, Z? It wouldn't produce a swirl like water falling through a hole. In the image, what you see is not the hole, but the absence of other things in a region in space. Yes, it would be an XYZ sphere that absorbs everything, just that by its very nature, you don't see it. And in this image, the black hole would be something in the center of that void. You can't see it, but it obscures a whole region. But could it also absorb your ships without your wanting to? Or can you always control being absorbed or not? I will get to that, Gosia. They cannot see the black hole because it absorbs all the light that is near it. But they can see another sphere that is the exit from the same black hole. Yes, it's just that there is an element of whirlpool there. But it could be because the light coming from the other side bends as it approaches the black hole's zone of influence. But that is in the case of many light sources behind it. The sphere that is the exit, and therefore a toroid, is a sun. The suns, from a certain point of view, are hollow. Not exactly like a hollow ball, but as an entrance or exit of a tunnel with more than 3 dimensions, but understandable as XYZ. The energy enters through the black hole and exits through the sun, making a toroid. The influence of this toroid can be several thousands of light years, and it's all intertwined. Every sun has its black hole, and every hole needs its opposite, a sun, and they come in various sizes, and they are according to each. We talk about absolute compression of critical mass. They all have this quality, or they will not be black holes. Asks Robert. If the black hole didn't swallow anything, would the sun go out? Not exactly, because it is a toroid. It feeds back on itself. The outer part of the toroid, or the orange peel part, is on the ether side. It is in itself an enormous zero-point reactor. Every sun is, and also every reactor core in one of our ships. Same principle, because it is a mini sun contained. That is why it does not extinguish. Asks Robert. So anything that a black hole swallows doesn't get destroyed, it is just moved. Yes, Robert, it only gets moved. It's just that something relative comes into play here. From the mathematical perspective of the external observer, what enters the black hole is destroyed, as it is compressed to critical mass, but from the object's perspective, it only changes in dimension and frequency, but relative to its internal geometry, it remains intact. What happens to the object is relative. Another point: it is impossible to calculate the size of a black hole, since its very properties make it impossible to measure it with distance, since that again is just an illusion. Therefore, from an external perception, it can eat objects significantly larger than itself, because they become distorted in relative size as they get closer to the hole. Therefore, a perceptually small hole, seen from the outside, can, from the close-up, be the size of an entire constellation or even a galaxy. Noticeably, and with those characteristics, there are no small ones, as they are described. Having said that, there are small ones, because let's say that a small lizard sunbathing on a rock contains its consciousness and is in itself the product of an energetic dynamic identical to a black hole. It is also a toroid. At the risk of going metaphysical, every consciousness creates its world, its own universe, because it lives in its personal interpretation of the universe. Therefore, the lizard and any other creature is a portal to another universe, its own lizard universe. You are black holes, metaphysically speaking, portals to other worlds, other interpretations of the universe. Asks Robert. Thank you, Swaruu. Are there ways to detect a black hole? Ways of detecting it. Leaving aside the traditional ways that are described online, you see or perceive it with the instruments as a very large concentration of gravity. This is a large concentration of standing waves with very elevated frequency harmonics. As I have said before, space is a fluid, and in it you perceive crests and valleys. Space is water in a state of vibration that are cycles from 1, 2, 4, 5, 7, 8, passing to the 0 point, when it depolarizes the energy of the ether side, or 3, 6, 9, which is the standing wave. The sun is a grand crest as a disturbance in the fabric of the fluid in space. For there to be a crest, there must be something that pushes the water to the other side. Now, imagine yourselves as a fish at sea. Everything is upside down now. You will see the large crests as valleys, as empty spaces. Turn it all upside down. For every concentration of energy in a point, there will be a deficit of equal force at the other end. You can map them like you do with everything else, and they can be dodged when traveling through space, but they are not a problem. Some species that do not have so much technology use them as corridors or high-velocity routes. Others, like us, who have more advanced technology, simply ignore them when in supraluminar flight. Because when in hyperspace, a ship jumps everything, including black holes. It is not traveling. It jumps into the ether and then jumps to its destination from there. From the ether and in the ether, there are no distances. That is all there is. So, from the ether, you can jump to wherever and whenever space-time equally. You only need the destination frequencies to know where to go. From the ether, there are no distances, and all the points of space-time are at equal distance, or cause the same effort to access equally. Comments Robert. What you say is very coherent. With this image of the black hole, they say that Albert Einstein was correct with his gravitation relativity theory. No. What they did was put together a whole story around the image of the black hole that they posted online to fit in and with Einstein's equations. Einstein did not predict that. What they did was make it fit the story, as they have done so many times before with what is said in the Bible. Remember, the excuse is that the light is red because it absorbs all the other wavelengths. But what it is a representation of the all-seeing eye, aiming to produce more fear and to validate its entities as existing. The Eye of Sauron, as some say. It is Saturn worship. The Lord of the Rings is Saturn, the Eye of Sauron. Something to clarify in passing. You enter from a black hole in the Andromeda constellation and exit from the Sun. But if you enter via the Sun, you exit behind Tauro. Wormhole entrance that exits from the Sun, M33, right there. You come out there and enter here. The nature of a wormhole is much more complex than what you see at first sight. It's not just a tube, as is said on Earth. There is a complex system based on frequencies in its interior. Everything connected from the ether. All the suns and all the black holes are connected in their interior, creating, with the proper knowledge of frequency mapping, a whole communication system that can take you anywhere in the galaxy and the universe. Asks Robert. Swaruu, do you know anything more about this black hole CGI? There is not much to comment, just that it is definitely more theater and eye drops from the Cabal and NASA. They say that it comes from elaborate systems that whatever, but it is made by a computer with false colors, like the hand of God that they pulled out some time ago too, or the Horse Nebula. Asks Robert. Would that shape be a black hole? We know that it would be the backside of a sun, but would it be that shape? As there are suns that emit energy, there are counter-suns of the same intensity that absorb energy. Earth's astronomy and astrophysics take them as separate when they are parts of the same thing. It is an energetic toroid, as is everything. The throat of the black hole is the engine, the exit is the sun, the entrance of the energy is the hole. And what does a hole look like in 3 dimensions? It is a sphere. The rest cannot be seen because it is in other planes, in the ether, except that this kind of geometrical model is incomprehensible to the average human mind. Asks Robert. But could a black hole be photographed? Only what is around the so-called event horizon, not the hole itself, for not even light escapes. Comments Robert. Okay, you couldn't take a picture of it then, because I don't think so. No, you cannot. Only the energy and the objects that go towards it. Or it is swirling entering, and the multiple objects will shape the gravity it exerts. But it is not the whole itself that's photographed. Comments Robert. Of course. That's why if you do go into a black hole, you exit in the corresponding sun. That's why you see objects coming out of the sun, because they use it as a road or a space shortcut. I'd like to understand a little more, please. What are black holes for and how are they produced? They are points of greater concentration of potential energy, where it has curdled in a very concentrated form, with the same dynamics as the mechanics of manifestation. If you want me to go into it, it will take a while because the explanation is long and technical. In short, it is a being. The sun is a being. As every being, it is an energetic toroid, as you too are. But a tree is clearer as such. They are sentient beings. What are they for? They serve to shorten the travel time of a ship from a distant place to this one, for example. You can know and make a map of where which entrances black holes are and where they go.
In the case of the sun, it is the exit for a black hole, the entrance, the one that corresponds to it. And it's a black hole. The entrance is in a very amusing place, but it's the truth. It is in the butt of Taurus. You go into with your ship, Taurus butt, and you come out here.
But what do they serve besides being used by the ships? What do they exist for from your perspective? For the same reason a cat exists, a dog, or you. It is a being with an agenda, its own life and consciousness. And what is its agenda? There is no reason other than to exist, to experience being a sun. How it manifests itself is a matter of manifestation mechanics. Space is not empty. It is an energetic fluid. That fluid is the most important, and it is the cause of the existence of matter. This fluid gives life. This fluid is potential energy. It is nothing more than water in a very high vibratory state. Like ripples in a pond of water, the potential energy spreads and interacts with other ripples. In the pond, they can be seen in 2 dimensions, in space in 3 dimensions. Not densities, I'm talking about XYZ. As a shock wave would propagate in the depths of the sea, in the form of circles, spheres. A shock wave interacts with others. Sometimes they become bigger, because they feed back on themselves. Contractive interference. Sometimes they neutralize each other. Destructive interference. Now, when the shock waves propagate at a specific frequency, frequency being understood as the oscillation between the crests and the valleys in an expanding energy wave, a single frequency harmonic is created. The harmonic of a frequency is comparable to music, perfect tones mathematically intertwined. An effect is produced that is called standing waves, which is a point of concentration of energy within a plane. All the energy is concentrated at that point. With sufficient concentration, the transformation of potential energy into hard matter takes place, which there is no such thing, just constant potential energy at that point. If the frequency harmonic is constant enough and of sufficient magnitude, volume, a sun is produced, which already is an energy bomb between the etheric side and the physical side, with a 3D humanized interpretation. It is self-sustaining. What produces the waves? The interaction between all points of potential energy sticking together with a specific dynamic or energy dance. What causes it? The ether, the side of the consciousness, the pure consciousness, the observation of the consciousness towards the potential energy. When something is lacking attention, this will tend to go from being matter to be potential energy once again. The more attention something receives, the more energy it has. Why does the sun have so much attention then? Because the harmonic of the frequency dictates it this way. And this comes from the sum of other frequencies interacting with each other. And it is the sum of all the other consciousnesses interacting with the final one, the sun, the planets that surround it, the consciousnesses of all creatures and beings that inhabit it, and the sun itself being a part that forms other constellations, galaxy, cluster of galaxies, supercluster of galaxies, the universe. It goes beyond human understanding, based on the observable, on the empirical, in what the scientific method can give, because it does not see, it does not understand that there is more, there is always more. That's why there are suns. For the same reason, there are birds. It is or are the sum of the creatures that inhabit it. What produces this concentration of energy within a plane? You said that it is an attention of the consciousness? What produces energy concentration in a point is the result of the harmonics of the frequency, which is what dictates where the material will manifest. What produces the waves that, when added together, form the harmonic of the frequency is the point of attention of a consciousness. A consciousness is the sum of other consciousnesses that support it in a progressive and cumulative way. Exactly, yes. And what moves the consciousness towards the attention? What impulses the attention? A conscious intention with the aim to create something intentionally. So the consciousness itself, beyond it all, is a being with intelligence and intentionality, observing from outside and inside at the same time, so to speak. It is everything. It is the sum of all. Asks Robert. I have a question. Just a little while ago I uploaded in my video, as we have already discussed and you have talked to Eridania, the sun is a portal. Therefore, what we see as shining is the exit, and the entrance or negative sun is elsewhere, central part, Andromeda's constellation. Swaruu, is this correct? Today we have talked about Taurus. As I have said at one point, a sun has more than one entrance and more than one exit. It is an internal dynamic that once again depends on the frequencies that are emitted or observed. From a certain frequency or density, you enter through the Tauruses behind and exit here. From another, you enter through Andromeda and exit here. If we go further by entering any black hole with the right frequency, energetic harmonics, we can exit through any sun. This means that everything is intertwined and part of a whole. A sun is not something apart from other suns. It is as an individual and at the same time forms a larger whole, the galaxy. As the consciousness of the hummingbird accumulates and adds to that of all other animals, people and plants to form the consciousness of the earth as an individual, which in turn forms, with that of the other planets, that of the sun. You see a hummingbird as something isolated. From a point of view, it is, as is a sun. But expand your consciousness further, and you will see that everything connects and adds up, because it is all part of the original source. And to compare, those who use the suns and black holes for transit have ships that use propulsion. They move through space from point A to point B. We Taygetans do not use this, so we don't exit from the sun, which is not hot. Going in through a black hole and coming out through a sun is low-tech. It is using a so-called wormhole. We have a technology that allows us to make our own individual wormhole, tailored to our needs. Our ships produce it. We do not use propulsion other than for maneuvers. The black hole is the entrance to a wormhole. A sun is the exit. That is why it shines, because it emits, spits out the electromagnetic energy it absorbed on the other side. It is the exact same principle as one of our engines. Asks Robert, could we be a sun, or we don't have sufficient energy? You are already a sun in an energetic way, as you are also an energetic toroid, and you function and live, exist with the same principles. Everything is a toroid. So is a cucumber. So is a hamburger or a tire. And why do they need to travel through these black holes? Does it help them? Especially if it's only from point A to B anyway? Why don't they just move through space? Because by using propulsion, it would take 400 years to get from point A to point B. Speaking of propulsion, I know there are a lot of trends on the web that talk about high-tech engines. What kind of ionic propulsion, what kind of microwave propulsion, etc. Gravitational manipulation. All that is propulsion. Technology vastly inferior to an electromagnetic plasma turbine. I insist, because it has been a source of criticism. Entering the wormhole is a shorter trip than traveling through space on a U-turn. Although, as I said, it is not merely an individual one. It is intertwined with others who share its energy and form it. Very good, thank you. I have never understood these subjects well. Asks Robert, has the closest black hole to the Earth been discovered?
I know about that. They say it is the black sun. Again, they're only seeing a point or a gravitational node, and there's nothing there. So, it is a point where gravitational frequency harmonics meet, and it is a concentration point. Big enough to be detected or measured, but not big enough to form something solid there. To us, those are gravity wells. When a ship is in propulsion mode, not hyperspace, they are avoided. But even though they're big ones, it is just like avoiding potholes in a bad road. Again, the concept of empty space is wrong. It is not empty, it is a liquid or fluid. You must realize there are whirlpools, swirls in the water, depressions, but it is three-dimensional, not two-dimensional as it would be on the surface of the water.
Yázhí on September 30th, 2020. A funnel only would be congruent with the flat hole, mathematically correct from a toroidal point of view from math given for the funnel, where A equals cross-section area of toroidal funnel and R stands for toroid radius to center line, if my memory serves me correctly. So the funnel would be congruent with the flat hole, but not a sphere as it appears in real space and life, where you must calculate an eternal, ever-flowing from every direction energy funnel that mathematically would be like that formula above, added to the exponential factor of a sphere. And as a geometrical object, it would be just about impossible to make it, as it is indeed multidimensional. Do they go anywhere you program your ship to go? Or they all have a specific exit point and you can't change that? Inside, they connect to wherever their energy math takes them to go. They are connected to an exit of equal strength, a star. But inside, there is no time, no space, no continuum. Everything there is connected to everywhere. All the stars converge there from the side of the ether. So from any black hole, theoretically, you can exit from any star. But it doesn't depend on you, no? Depends on its own mechanism, right? You can't direct it, only to a certain level. If you just follow the main flow of the energy of the engine, that's the toroidal flow of the entire system, half of it in the side of the ether, the other half in what you call the material world or side, then you would exit out of one specific star. But once in the ether inside, that would be equivalent to being in hyperspace. Same thing. Knowing the energy print of the area and the frequency dynamics or dance of one specific black hole, you can change the frequency of your ship, your little ship's toroid. And with that, it adds to the frequency of the flow of the black hole, creating a shift in frequency of your ship that will alter your exit point to another star closer to your final destination. This is how many races navigate the cosmos. But even for them, it is more practical to enter the ether system from a star and exit from another star, avoiding black holes, as their energy is too dominant and tends to override just about everything. It is possible to navigate a black hole, but it's more complicated than just using solar portals.